Have you ever felt like a character trapped in an endless drama, always reacting, never truly in control? Imagine for a moment stepping into your own personal movie where you're no longer a supporting actor, pushed around by life's villains, critics, or emotional vampires. Instead, you're the calm, confident hero who remains steady even when chaos unfolds around you. In this gripping exploration, we reveal secrets from ancient Stoicism, practical psychology, and real-world experiences that teach you exactly how to master your emotions. From learning how to effortlessly dismiss toxic comments to gracefully sidestepping pointless arguments, you'll discover how to rewrite the script of your daily interactions. Stick around till the very end for the most powerful lessons and a surprising plot twist you won't see coming. If you're ready to take back the director's chair of your emotional life, hit subscribe and let's dive in. Life can sometimes feel like a whirlwind of challenges, unexpected comments from strangers, criticism from co-workers, or disappointments from people we care about. All of these moments have the potential to tilt our emotional balance, leaving us angry, frustrated, or deeply upset. But here is a perspective not everyone readily considers. Our emotions are not puppets on a string, and no one else should hold those strings unless we give them permission. This is the foundation of emotional mastery, and one that resonates with Stoic principles. Stoicism, which originated in ancient Greece and later flourished in Rome, emphasizes self-control, resilience, and the conviction that our perceptions determine our feelings more than the events themselves. When we see someone behaving rudely or find ourselves in a tough situation, our immediate reaction might be to point fingers and proclaim, "They ruined my day." Yet, if we slow down for a moment, Stoicism and countless other philosophical traditions teach us that there is, in fact, a crucial pause between what happens and how we react. That space is our power. The place where we decide whether someone else's negative comment will derail our peace or roll off like water on a duck's back. We often say we want a life of serenity where day-to-day irritations don't rattle us. But too many of us wait for everyone else to behave better or for circumstances to magically improve. We hold the false belief that if only the world were kinder or more understanding, then we would finally feel calm. The reality is that the world is diverse, unpredictable, and made up of billions of different outlooks and personalities. Some people will indeed be considerate and supportive, while others will be indifferent, stressed, or even malicious. We do not control their attitudes. What we do have control over is our inner environment, the mental domain that shapes our interpretation of events and the subsequent emotional response. Picture walking through a busy city wearing a pair of high-quality, noise-canceling headphones. The honking cars, chattering crowds, and street vendors might still be present, but you hear only muffled echoes. Their noise doesn't invade your personal space in the same way it would without those headphones. Emotional mastery can function much like that technology only. It's an internal filter rather than a physical device. Instead of letting the chaos of external events take over, you recognize that your peace is a product of your perspective. Cultivating that perspective is neither quick nor effortless. It is a practice repeated day after day, conversation after conversation, conflict after conflict. One of the aims of this piece is to provide you with a set of principles, a kind of roadmap that shows you how to remain composed in the face of adversity. We'll look into common traps that derail our peace, the urge to blame others for our emotional states, unrealistic expectations of how people should behave, the seemingly irresistible need to prove we're correct, and more. These are not new ideas. Philosophers, spiritual teachers, and wise observers of human nature have tackled them for centuries. But in our modern era, with constant connectivity and social pressures, it's all the more critical to develop techniques to safeguard our emotional well-being. Across these 10 core lessons, we'll weave together a tapestry of practical examples, philosophical teachings, and personal reflections. By the end, you'll see that protecting your peace is not about retreating from the world, nor is it about pretending negative emotions do not exist. It's about filtering out the noise, acknowledging your power to choose, and walking through life unshaken. The Stoic approach to emotional control aligns beautifully with other wisdom traditions that highlight living in accordance with reason, compassion, and a deep understanding of how little control we have over others and how much control we have over ourselves. Before diving into specific techniques and actionable insights, let us reflect on what emotional freedom really means. At its core, emotional freedom is not about being numb or indifferent. On the contrary, it involves feeling your emotions fully. Anger, sadness, joy, excitement, yet cultivating the ability to step back and respond thoughtfully, rather than reacting impulsively. The core message is, you are more than your instincts. If someone hurls an insult your way, or if circumstances break unfavorably, you're perfectly entitled to feel a spark of anger or disappointment. Emotions are signals that can inform us when something is off or important. The Stoic perspective does not advocate for suppressing your emotional responses. Instead, it encourages understanding those responses, placing them into perspective, and not letting them drive your behavior blindly. Consider someone who cuts you off in traffic. A common immediate reaction is to curse, honk, and possibly engage in risky driving to show them how wrong they were. But what does that get you? Typically, you end up more agitated, your focus on the road suffers, and you might carry that anger into the rest of your day. All because of someone else's poor driving choice, a factor outside your control. Emotional freedom would mean acknowledging I feel disrespected or inconvenienced, but then deciding, however, I choose not to let this single incident unravel my entire morning. Rather than dwelling on the perceived slight, you recognize it and then let it go. This capacity to shift from the initial reflexive anger to a calmer mindset exemplifies the difference between being under the sway of external forces and steering your own mental ship. The modern world, and especially the online environment, presents endless triggers, negative comments on social media, sensational news stories, unsolicited advice, or even subtle digs from acquaintances. If we're not careful, we can spend all day getting tugged in every direction by these triggers, constantly feeling like we need to respond, defend ourselves, or correct misinformation. Yet if we trace the lineage of Stoic teachings from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, we see a common refrain. Focus on what is within your power and practice accepting what is not. Strangers' remarks, random events, or a co-worker's sour mood are mostly outside our sphere of influence. But how we respond, what we choose to think and do about them, remains entirely ours to command. In practice, part of emotional freedom is also about mental clarity. When you're overwhelmed with anger, your clarity vanishes, leading to impulsive decisions you might regret later. A calm mind, on the other hand, is agile and capable of discerning which battles are worth fighting and which are better left alone. In that sense, choosing not to respond to provocation becomes a sort of strategic advantage rather than a sign of weakness. It's akin to a wise leader who decides not to march into a pointless skirmish because they can see the bigger picture. This bigger picture is your overall emotional health, your long-term goals, and the relationships that truly matter. Reacting to every slight as though it demands immediate retaliation can rob you of peace and distract you from what truly enriches your life. As we proceed, we'll break down the 10 lessons that can reshape your relationship with anger, frustration, and emotional turbulence. Each lesson stands on its own, but is also linked to the others by a single overarching theme. You have the power to direct your inner life in a manner that reduces suffering and promotes greater well-being. Whether you're handling conflict at work, tension at home, or negativity from strangers, these principles offer a mental toolkit to remain steady and unshakable. We'll begin with the cornerstone idea. Your reactions are not dictated by external events, but by your internal decisions, a principle that might sound obvious, but is often overlooked in the heat of the moment. The first lesson, and arguably the most transformative one, is the recognition that no one else can determine your emotional state unless you grant them that influence. It sounds simple, yet how many times have you heard people say, "They made me so mad," or "He ruined my day"? The language itself reveals how we automatically hand our power over to others as if they could flip a switch in our minds. But Stoic wisdom, modern psychology, and personal anecdotes all converge on this truth between someone's action, the stimulus, and your emotional response. There's a crucial moment of choice, even if it's fleeting. Let's imagine you are waiting in line at a cafe on a morning when you're already feeling a bit stressed. Maybe you woke up late or have a tight schedule. Suddenly, someone behind you in line starts to complain loudly that you're taking too long. If you assume that this person's words automatically cause you anger, you become a passenger in your own emotional vehicle. Their rudeness ignites your frustration, and you lash out or you walk away, fuming. However, if you pause even for a couple of seconds and remind yourself that you control your response, you create a space in which you can choose to remain calm. You might simply acknowledge the person's complaint and let it roll off your back, or calmly explain that you'll be done soon. Either way, you preserve your peace of mind. This approach does not mean ignoring what others do or denying genuine hurt or frustration. Anger and other negative emotions can be valid signals that something needs attention or boundaries need to be set. The key is separating your initial emotional reaction from the subsequent response. The Stoics, especially Viktor Frankl, often associated with existential psychology but deeply influenced by Stoic thought, remind us that this moment of conscious choice is the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. The real power lies not in controlling external events, which is usually impossible, but in shaping our own mindset. The strength of this principle lies in its practicality. You can begin applying it immediately. The next time someone irritates you, catch yourself mid-reaction. Identify the emotion. Are you feeling disrespected, undervalued, or perhaps anxious? Then remember the rule: I control how I react. This mental reminder can transform a potentially heated argument into a calm discussion or even a decision not to engage at all. Over time, you'll notice fewer wasted hours stewing over what someone said or did, and more energy available for productive tasks and meaningful connections. And when it seems too difficult to resist snapping back or feeling offended, try visualizing yourself stepping outside of the scenario to observe it from a third-person perspective. Pretend you're watching a play. The other person's words or actions are just lines in a script. You, as the observer, get to decide whether to be drawn into the drama or remain a thoughtful spectator. This mental imagery can help you remember that your peace of mind is not up for grabs unless you willingly place it on the table. The more you reinforce this principle, the more instinctive it becomes, ultimately creating a life where fleeting provocations have less power to stir up lasting unrest. Moving on to the second lesson, let go of the notion that people should conduct themselves the way you would. This is a common source of frustration for many individuals, especially those who sincerely believe in reciprocity. I help them, so why won't they help me in return, or I'm always polite? Why can't they be polite as well? While reciprocity might be a natural desire, the harsh reality is that everyone navigates life with different values, priorities, and stresses. Expecting others to conform to your internal code of conduct sets you up for chronic disappointment. Consider a scenario you've gone above and beyond for a friend, assisting them during a tough period or consistently checking in on their well-being. Yet the day you could use some assistance or emotional support, they're nowhere to be found, or worse, they're dismissive. The gut reaction often is outrage or disappointment. You might say, "I would never do that." But there's the key phrase, "I would never do that." It arises from the belief that the other person lives by the same standards and moral compass that you do. The conflict and resultant anger occurs because you clash with the reality that people differ. Now, letting go of these expectations does not imply you must tolerate abusive or manipulative behavior. It also does not mean you can't set boundaries or walk away from toxic dynamics. It simply means you acknowledge that trying to control someone else's conduct or feeling perpetually shocked that they don't match your personal ideals is a fruitless exercise. The Stoics often mention focusing on your own virtue because that is under your control, while recognizing the futility of attempting to micromanage the virtues or vices of others. Your emotional serenity improves once you adapt your perspective to accept that everyone is on their own journey. Moreover, dropping rigid expectations about how others should act can be remarkably liberating. It frees up mental space that might otherwise be consumed by resentment or ruminations like, "How could they do that?" Instead, you might take a stance of curiosity or neutrality. They chose this course of action. That's interesting. Now, how do I want to respond? With the burden of unrealistic expectations lifted, you can better assess what's happening in front of you and make practical decisions about your relationship with that person. Perhaps you conclude you need more distance from them, or that you prefer to keep interactions strictly professional. Whatever you decide, you do so with a clear head, unclouded by the sense of betrayal that arises when you assume others must share your standards. One way to internalize this lesson is to remind yourself of the enormous range of human experiences and motivations. People come from myriad cultural backgrounds, childhoods, traumas, ambitions, and personalities. Each of those factors can create a unique lens through which they see the world. If you can accept that everyone has a distinct lens, you'll be less startled by actions that you interpret as rude, inconsiderate, or just plain bizarre. Instead of being caught in a cycle of condemnation, you can address the situation pragmatically, deciding what role, if any, that person continues to play in your life. This approach not only protects your peace, but also fosters a more profound sense of compassion and realism about human nature. Almost all of us have experienced the intense, almost visceral drive to prove we are right during a heated debate or confrontation. It might happen during a family dinner over political disagreements in the workplace, when conflicting solutions are proposed, or even on social media, where endless arguments rage in comment sections. Our egos whisper, if we let them think we're wrong, we lose. But do we really lose? What exactly is at stake, and is it worth sacrificing our emotional balance? Lesson 3 encourages us to examine the deeper cost of always needing to be correct. In many cases, the quest to be the winner of an argument fuels. Conflict damages relationships and leaves everyone involved feeling drained. Ironically, even if you do prove your point, the sense of triumph can be short-lived, especially if the process strained a meaningful relationship. Moreover, an unyielding fixation on being right can blind you to the possibility that you might be wrong, or that there is a more nuanced perspective you haven't considered. True wisdom sometimes involves recognizing the limits of your knowledge and the validity of another person's viewpoint. Letting go of the need to always be right does not mean you abandon critical thinking or stop standing up for issues that genuinely matter. Instead, it means choosing your battles wisely and resisting the urge to enter trivial or unproductive disputes. When you find yourself drawn into a disagreement, pause and ask yourself, is being right in this instance crucial to my values, my work, or my well-being? If the answer is no, it may serve you better to yield, say I see your point, or simply let the conversation fade. This approach can conserve your energy for more substantive matters or for more rewarding interactions with family, friends, and colleagues. Another key element is emotional maturity. Often the fight to be right stems from a deep-seated insecurity. We may feel that being proven wrong implies a personal failing or diminishes our intellect in front of others. But in reality, acknowledging errors is a powerful demonstration of self-confidence. It takes courage to concede that someone else might have a better argument or that you overlooked an important detail. This humility not only fosters healthier communication, but also positions you to learn, adapt, and become more knowledgeable. As the ancient Chinese sage Lao Tzu put it, he who is attached to his views will never grow. Growth demands that we remain open to correction. In practice, this lesson might arise in everyday scenarios. For instance, imagine your partner claims a quicker route to a destination exists and you're certain that your route is better. Rather than turning the entire car ride into a combative test of wills, consider letting them try their route. You might be pleasantly surprised, or perhaps you'll confirm your suspicion that it was indeed slower. In either case, you preserve harmony and demonstrate flexibility. This principle scales up to more important disagreements as well, teaching you to preserve your peace and relationships without letting every minor difference turn into a stressful battleground. In letting go of the compulsion to always be right, you gain the freedom to be at peace, to learn from others, and to allow them the dignity of their own perspectives. In many ways, Lesson 4 is closely tied to the previous ones, but it zeroes in on how external opinions can erode our sense of self-worth. Whether it's a colleague's scathing remark about your performance or a friend's casual criticism of your personal style, negative words have a way of clinging to us if we're not careful. However, giving others the power to define our worth can trap us in an endless cycle of validation seeking. One negative comment can cancel out dozens of positive ones in our minds if we let it. But the truth is, your intrinsic worth is not something that can be bestowed or revoked by another person's passing judgment. Consider a scenario where you've put considerable effort into a creative project, perhaps writing a short story or designing a piece of art. You share it online, and while most comments are positive or encouraging, there is one that reads, "This is so amateurish. You should give up." If that single negative sentiment plants itself in your heart, you might start to doubt your abilities, ignoring all the evidence that you are talented, capable, and improving. The moment you let that external opinion overshadow your internal conviction is the moment you relinquish your self-esteem to the whim of a stranger. Instead, a healthier approach is to evaluate the feedback rationally. Is it constructive criticism or just an insult? Is there anything specific you can learn from it, or is it merely negativity? If it's the latter, discard it without a second thought. If there's a kernel of useful insight, extract it for growth and move on. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius captured this principle succinctly. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own. Ultimately, only you know the entirety of your journey, your struggles, triumphs, values, and goals. Outsiders see only glimpses and form opinions based on incomplete information. Consequently, it's both unreasonable and self-defeating to let their judgments define who you are. Releasing yourself from the grip of external validation also means you free up mental space and emotional energy. You no longer shape your life to please others or shrink from your aspirations out of fear of criticism. A practical way to break the habit of letting others dictate your sense of worth is to cultivate a strong sense of self-awareness. Keep track of your progress, your achievements, and your personal growth goals. Remind yourself regularly of what you have overcome and how you've developed new skills or insights. When a disparaging comment arises, stack it against the evidence you've gathered about your real capabilities and evolving character. Another helpful approach is to maintain a close circle of people whose opinions you do respect: mentors, close friends, or family members who offer balanced, constructive advice rather than knee-jerk judgments. Their input might serve as a more reliable barometer than random external feedback. By refusing to allow anyone's passing words to dent your self-worth, you become resilient. This resilience anchors you when facing career challenges, interpersonal conflicts, or social media criticism. It also fosters authentic self-expression. No longer compelled to conform for the sake of approval, you can more freely express your genuine thoughts, talents, and feelings. Over time, the shift in mindset is profoundly liberating, revealing that your real value, your essential dignity, has always been yours to claim and never anyone else's to decide. In this first part, we've established 4 foundational lessons that form the bedrock of emotional mastery. First, recognizing that your reactions are indeed a choice can revolutionize the way you handle everyday provocations. Second, relinquishing the expectation that others will act just like you can shield you from needless anger and disappointment. Third, releasing the near-obsessive compulsion to prove you're right at all costs can bring a surprising degree of serenity, saving you from arguments that bear little significance. Fourth, not allowing others' opinions to define your worth fosters self-reliance, autonomy, and inner confidence. Throughout these explorations, a common thread emerges. Each lesson requires introspection and mindful awareness. The world outside will always be complicated, and people will remain unpredictable. However, these truths do not have to translate into a life of frustration or emotional roller coasters. By deliberately practicing these lessons, often in small daily interactions, you build resilience and shield your peace from the turbulence around you. As we move on to part 2, we'll delve into additional pillars of staying unbothered, setting healthy boundaries, detaching from unsolicited opinions, harnessing the power of silence, and cultivating gratitude. These lessons will further empower you to navigate relationships and external conditions with clarity and composure. Remember, emotional mastery is not about eliminating emotion. It's about guiding emotion, ensuring that you remain the captain of your own mental vessel. Keep that principle in mind as we proceed into the next set of transformative insights. Boundaries are a vital component of any healthy relationship, whether it's with friends, family, romantic partners, or colleagues. Yet the very concept of boundary setting can feel uneasy for those who've been socialized to always be agreeable or to put others' needs ahead of their own. Lesson 5 reminds us that saying no isn't a sign of selfishness, it's an act of self-preservation. When you allow others to consistently overstep your comfort zone, you eventually pay the price in the form of burnout, resentment, and emotional distress. Protecting your peace requires that you clearly define what you will and will not accept in your interactions. Take, for instance, a colleague who frequently assigns you extra work with tight deadlines, assuming you'll comply without protest. If you keep accepting these burdens, two problems arise. One, you might grow increasingly stressed and bitter, which can poison your motivation and overall morale. 2, your colleague never learns there is a limit to your capacity. By calmly and kindly stating, "I'm at full capacity right now and can't take on additional tasks," you draw a clear line. You're not rejecting them as a person, nor are you saying you'll never help. Instead, you're stating a fact about your current bandwidth. This fosters mutual respect and discourages exploitative patterns from forming. Boundaries don't just apply to workload or time management. They're equally crucial for emotional well-being. You might have a friend who constantly unloads their problems on you, turning every conversation into a venting session. While supporting friends is part of healthy bonding, if their persistent negativity is dragging you down or infringing on your personal time, it's fair to request a more balanced dynamic. Something as straightforward as "I'm here for you, but could we also discuss some positive things going on? I need a bit of an emotional break," can reset the tone. The key is communicating lovingly but firmly, making your needs clear without aggression. Setting boundaries also ties in closely with the concept of self-worth. When you respect your own needs and limits, you reinforce the idea that your well-being matters. This self-assurance often radiates outward, encouraging others to treat you with similar respect. On the flip side, if you permit boundary violations repeatedly, it can erode your sense of self-respect. You may start believing you have no choice, or that your primary function is to accommodate others, which is a slippery slope to chronic anxiety or discontent. Of course, not everyone will welcome your new boundaries with a smile. Some may guilt-trip you, accuse you of being unhelpful or uncaring, or otherwise test the new limits you've set. This is especially true if they've become accustomed to your endless availability. Nonetheless, you must remember that such negative reactions often say more about their reliance on your constant compliance than about you being in the wrong. Holding firm is essential. Over time, people tend to adapt or they drift away, which may be painful, but sometimes necessary for your emotional health. Ultimately, the goal is not to shut people out, but to prevent unhealthy dynamics from consuming your energy. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup. If preserving your inner stability makes you stronger and happier, you'll likely be in a better position to help others in a meaningful, sustainable way. We live in an era of hyperconnectivity where everyone seems to have an opinion on everything, and they are often more than happy to share it. Whether it's about the clothes you wear, the career path you choose, or the way you manage your relationships, unsolicited judgments arrive in an endless stream. If you're not mindful, these opinions can weigh heavily on you, prompting second-guessing and self-doubt. Lesson 6. Detaching from others' opinions echoes themes touched on earlier, but it is so crucial that it warrants deeper examination. Picture how much brain space is devoted to worrying about what they, a nebulous group of co-workers, acquaintances, or even internet strangers, might think. How many opportunities for creativity, risk-taking, or authentic expression have you passed up simply because you feared rejection or ridicule? Detaching from the opinions of others does not mean shutting yourself off from feedback entirely. Constructive criticism can be invaluable, especially when it's from people you trust and respect. The key is to filter away whether the feedback is genuinely helpful, or is it just someone projecting their insecurities or biases onto you? One effective filtering mechanism is to ask, would I trade places with this person, especially in the domain they are critiquing? For instance, if someone is criticizing your business idea but has never successfully run a business themselves, their perspective might be less relevant than that of a seasoned entrepreneur. Alternatively, if it's a mentor you admire who has genuine insights to offer, then their feedback might be worth considering. This approach doesn't mean you become arrogant or dismissive. It simply means you assess the credibility and intent behind the criticism before letting it shape your emotions or decisions. In the Stoic tradition, the concept of detaching from external impressions is deeply rooted in the idea that external events and, by extension, external opinions lie outside our complete control. You cannot police what every person thinks about you, nor would that be a wise use of your energy. Instead, focus on the internal realm, your moral compass, your work ethic, your pursuit of wisdom and virtue. When your self-esteem and decisions stem from these internal benchmarks, the whims of public opinion lose their grip on you. An illustration of this principle at work is in the creative fields. Many artists, writers, and performers learn that the public's response to their work can vary drastically. One critic hails them as a genius. Another calls them overrated. If they become too attached to either praise or criticism, they risk losing their unique vision. The Stoic path is one of measured consideration. Take in feedback, glean what's helpful, discard the rest, and keep moving forward, rooted in your personal sense of purpose and passion. Ultimately, detaching from opinions is not an invitation to arrogance or isolation. Rather, it's an invitation to hold your self-worth and life choices with confidence. You welcome insights that foster growth while sidestepping unwarranted negativity. This balanced approach allows for genuine improvement without compromising the authenticity that makes you who you are. As you cultivate this skill, you'll find that your emotional landscape becomes more stable, less prone to fluctuations triggered by what others say or think. There is a familiar saying that silence is golden. In the context of emotional mastery, silence can indeed be a powerful tool, particularly when confronted with provocation, insults, or deliberately antagonistic behavior. Lesson 7 focuses on harnessing silence as a strategic and compassionate response to negativity rather than fueling conflicts with anger or heated words. Imagine you're in a heated debate and the other person lobs a personal insult, an attempt to rattle you or score a cheap point. The conventional reaction is to return fire with equally sharp words. But what if instead you respond with calm silence? This sudden shift halts the momentum of the confrontation. The person looking for a fight finds no immediate fuel. It's akin to depriving a fire of oxygen. The flames gradually die down. Silence doesn't signify surrender or cowardice. It shows self-possession and self-control. By not flinging emotional darts back, you remain poised, and you deliver a potent message. Your attempt to demean me does not obligate me to dignify it with a reaction. Of course, not all situations call for silence. There are contexts where speaking up is necessary, when boundaries need reasserting, or when moral issues are at stake. However, in many day-to-day irritations, from petty office gossip to unkind remarks, Silence can serve as a way to conserve energy. It's also an avenue for reflection. You can step back and decide if a vocal response will genuinely improve the situation or simply prolong negativity. Additionally, responding with silence can protect you from saying something you'll later regret. Anger, especially when it flares up quickly, can cloud judgment. The body surges with adrenaline, and the mind may default to defensive reactionary language. In the aftermath, you might wish you had taken a more measured approach. Silence grants you the buffer to reflect and choose your words carefully if you choose to speak at all. It's a stepping stone toward emotional clarity, allowing you to think, is there any positive outcome in matching their hostility with hostility of my own? Another angle to consider is how silence affects not just you, but also any onlookers. If this confrontation is taking place in a public or group setting, your calm restraint can leave a strong impression. It sets an example for more peaceful conflict resolution. It might even cause the aggressor to reflect on their behavior, realizing they've crossed a line. While the Stoic approach primarily focuses on your inner response, the outward effect can be equally beneficial. Keep in mind that intentional silence is distinct from passive aggression or the silent treatment. The latter often arises from a desire to punish someone by withholding communication. In contrast, the purposeful silence discussed here is about preventing escalation and maintaining your composure. It's a short-term tactic for immediate conflict management as well as a long-term habit to ensure that you don't let others' negativity dictate your emotional states. By integrating this practice into your daily life, be it at home, at work, or online, you gain the freedom to remain above the fray, protecting your mental well-being while minimizing unnecessary drama. Gratitude might not be the first tool you think of when dealing with anger, but Lesson 8 underscores how a grateful mindset can directly neutralize negative emotions. Anger often swells in the space we allocate for grievances, what went wrong, what someone said, what didn't meet our expectations. Gratitude, however, works like a spotlight, shifting our attention onto what is going right, what we do have, and what we can appreciate in the midst of hardship. This spotlight effect can soften the edges of anger, allowing us to see a bigger, more balanced picture. Consider a scenario where you're stuck in an excruciatingly slow queue at the grocery store, and your frustration is mounting because you have somewhere urgent to be. In that moment, you can choose to let anger blaze and fill your mind with complaints. Why can't they open another register? Why did I pick this line? Alternatively, you can pause and mentally list the things you're grateful for in that very moment. The fact that you have money to buy groceries, that you have a place to be, implying you have responsibilities, engagements, or people awaiting you, or that you live in a community with available food. This mental exercise might seem trivial, but it can radically change your emotional climate within seconds. The line might still be moving slowly, but you'll likely feel less agitated and more at peace. From a neurological standpoint, shifting your focus to gratitude activates parts of the brain associated with positive emotion and calm. It's challenging to hold on to intense anger when your mind is scanning for blessings or sources of joy. Of course, this doesn't mean you ignore legitimate problems or refuse to acknowledge injustices. It simply means you diffuse the destructive side of anger by balancing the emotional ledger, recognizing that alongside what's frustrating you, there are always aspects of your life that are going right. Incorporating a regular gratitude practice into your life can fortify this skill. Some people find it beneficial to keep a small journal in which they jot down a few things they're grateful for each day. Over time, this repeated action trains the mind to more quickly pivot to gratitude during challenging moments. Gratitude also has a spillover effect by frequently reminding yourself of what you value. You cultivate a sense of abundance. You may become more patient with others, more empathetic, and generally more resilient because you're anchored in the positives that exist beneath life's surface irritations. Moreover, gratitude can be a tool in relationships as well. Instead of dwelling on a friend's or partner's flaws, you might consciously reflect on what they do. Write the support they've provided, the shared memories, the ways they bring light into your life. That shift doesn't negate issues that need addressing, but it prevents anger from warping your perspective, making your sense of connection more robust and open to constructive dialogue. If your partner forgets to do a small task, rather than letting anger explode, you might recall all the ways they've been there for you in the past. Again, it's not about excusing what's wrong. It's about ensuring that your anger doesn't overshadow your recognition of the good. By weaving gratitude into daily routines, whether through journaling, short mental check-ins, or heartfelt conversations, you gradually reshape your default emotional responses. The slightest spark of anger can be swiftly tempered by a reminder of all you have to be thankful for. While this approach might sound simplistic, the cumulative effect is enormous. It transforms your emotional environment from one prone to volatile reactions into one imbued with a consistent sense of balance and appreciation. With lessons 5 through 8, we've moved deeper into the practical application of emotional mastery. You've seen how establishing boundaries preserves your energy. Detaching from opinions upholds your self-confidence. Deploying silence prevents needless escalation, and leaning into gratitude diffuses anger. Collectively, these tools help you navigate the complexities of social and personal life with grace and resilience. It's worth noting that none of these lessons require you to suppress genuine emotion. Stoicism, and indeed most philosophies that advocate emotional awareness, do not teach us to become robots devoid of feeling. Rather, they guide us toward a healthy, moderated expression of emotion, where impulses do not rule our actions. You still acknowledge disappointment, hurt, or anger, but you don't let them hijack your decisions. In these 8 lessons so far, you're essentially learning how to harness the energy of emotion and channel it in ways that protect your peace and affirm your self-worth. Another point to emphasize is that mastery in these areas is a practice. You don't read about boundary setting once and instantly become a boundary setting expert. Nor do you adopt a gratitude practice on one hectic afternoon and immediately find all your anger issues resolved. Each lesson invites ongoing application, reflection, and refinement. You might slip up. You might catch yourself fuming or oversharing your time or caving into someone's negative opinion. The real growth occurs when you notice the slip-up, adjust, and move forward more wisely. In the next part, Part 3 will examine the final 2 lessons which tie everything together. Lessons that focus on reframing criticism as fuel for growth and mastering the art of letting go. These elements are closely interwoven with everything we've covered so far, yet they warrant a special attention because criticism and unresolved resentments are 2 of the most persistent triggers of anger and inner turmoil. Stay tuned as we explore how to embrace feedback even when it's harsh, and how to release grudges that weigh you down. By the time we conclude all 10 lessons, you'll have a robust mental toolkit for staying unbothered in a world that often feels anything but serene. Before we wrap up, Part 2, let's preview the essence of the final 2 lessons. The 9th lesson focuses on criticism, how to evaluate it and use it productively, rather than letting it become a source of bitterness. Everyone receives criticism at some point, be it constructive, well-intentioned advice or scathing, poorly aimed judgments. Learning how to separate the gems from the rubble can transform painful remarks into opportunities for self-improvement. Meanwhile, the 10th and last lesson addresses the art of letting go, especially letting go of anger, grudges, and regrets that do little but siphon your mental energy. This is an act of liberation. Holding on to resentment is often compared to clutching a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else, not realizing the only person being burned is you. We'll explore how to release that destructive energy in a way that doesn't trivialize what happened, but frees you to move forward unencumbered. These two lessons act as culminating principles for everything we've discussed so far, because they require emotional equilibrium, humility, and self-compassion. Criticism, accepted with grace, can polish your strengths and help you address weaknesses. Letting go of past hurts ensures you're not carrying a mountain of emotional baggage into every new experience. Together, they represent a path to deeper serenity, a serenity that is anchored in realistic acceptance of human flaws, both your own and others, and in the resolve to keep growing no matter what negativity you encounter. In concluding part 2, remember that these lessons are incremental building blocks. Boundary setting might make it easier to detach from negative opinions. Detaching from negative opinions helps you respond with silence instead of rage. Practicing gratitude can anchor you in a state of mind more receptive to new insights, which in turn helps you handle criticism with greater composure. Everything is interconnected, forming a holistic approach to protecting your emotional well-being. As we close part 2, it's beneficial to take a moment to review how these lessons fit together in your daily life. Perhaps in recent days, you've encountered a conversation or situation where employing a boundary or a moment of silence could have shifted the outcome. Use this as an opportunity to reflect. The aim is not perfection. It's consistent, mindful improvement. Each time you stand firm on your boundaries, resist the pull of external judgments, practice the serenity of silence, or embrace gratitude in the face of frustration, you strengthen the mental muscles that keep you calm and grounded. This practice-oriented viewpoint is what makes Stoicism and other life philosophies so enduring. They are not just academic theories to discuss abstractly. They are practical tools you can carry with you on a difficult phone call, in a tense meeting, or during a heated family gathering. As you integrate these strategies, you'll likely experience fewer emotional swings, less regret over heated responses, and a more stable sense of who you are. We are now set to move into part 3, where we'll uncover the final pieces of this puzzle, converting criticism into a vehicle for growth and mastering the art of letting go of grudges. By melding these lessons with the earlier ones, you can build a life that is resilient against negativity and open to growth. Prepare to explore fresh perspectives on criticism and the liberating power of release. Feel free to share your thoughts on the lessons so far, or note any experiences you've had in applying them. Let's continue this journey toward becoming truly unbothered. Criticism is one of those universal experiences. No matter who you are or what you do, you're bound to encounter critiques at some point. Sometimes the feedback is constructive, aimed at guiding you to improve a specific skill or correct an oversight. Other times, it can be delivered harshly or rooted in jealousy, ignorance, or outright malice. Regardless of the source, criticism has an outsized potential to ignite anger or self-doubt. Lesson 9. Advocates for a shift in perspective see criticism as a potential tool for growth rather than a personal attack. When we feel criticized, our immediate impulse might be to defend ourselves, to react with indignation, or to shut down emotionally. This defensive posture emerges because criticism can feel like a threat to our sense of competence or self-worth. Yet Stoic philosophers and modern psychologists alike suggest that criticism also holds a mirror up to us. Even if it's poorly communicated, there may be a kernel of truth or a clue about how others perceive us that could guide constructive change. It's a bit like panning for gold. You sift through the murky water of someone's remarks to find if there's any valuable nugget. If there is none, then you can discard it without investing too much emotional energy. A helpful strategy is to pause and analyze the criticism with 3 questions in mind. Source: who's offering this critique? Do they have expertise or insight in the area they're criticizing? Intent: are they genuinely trying to help? Or are they venting frustration or jealousy? Relevance: even if their tone is harsh, is there factual information or a legitimate point that can help me improve? Consider a scenario where a manager at work bluntly points out several flaws in a project you spent weeks on. While it might sting, you could benefit by discerning whether those flaws truly exist, and if so, how you can address them to deliver a stronger outcome next time. On the other hand, if someone online hurls insults about your personal style but lacks any sense of fashion themselves, or is simply being mean, their critique might hold little credible value. You can let it pass without internalizing the negativity. Reframing criticism in this way helps preserve your peace because you're no longer taking every negative remark as a reflection of your personal failings. Instead, you see each critique as a potential nudge, sometimes a rude nudge granted toward greater awareness. The Stoics suggest that when we're criticized, we might even respond along the lines of, "If they knew all my faults, they'd have a lot more to say." While this can be interpreted humorously, it also implies humility. We all have blind spots and areas we can work on. If a piece of criticism highlights one of those areas, it's doing us a favor even if it stings. Moreover, how you respond to criticism can define your character. When you react calmly and thoughtfully, you demonstrate maturity and self-confidence. You also create opportunities to open a dialogue with the critic, possibly transforming a negative moment into a constructive one. If the criticism is valid, thank the person and reflect on their input. If it isn't, you might respond courteously or not at all, preserving your dignity. In this way, criticism becomes less about hurting you and more about sharpening you like iron that is honed by friction. This doesn't mean you should welcome attacks on your person, but it does mean you can navigate critiques without letting them dominate your emotional state. Criticism can come at the most inconvenient times. A family member might voice displeasure about your life choices during a gathering, or a friend might say something that feels disheartening right when you're feeling most vulnerable. In these moments, your initial reaction might be disbelief or anger. But part of reframing criticism is learning to handle it skillfully even when you're caught off guard. A crucial step is to manage your emotional reactivity. Take a deep breath, maybe even ask for a moment, or say, "Let me think about that if the situation allows." Giving yourself a small pause creates room for your rational mind to catch up with your emotional response. Once you have that mental space, consider the possibility that the critic might be mixing valuable feedback with unhelpful delivery. Distinguish the packaging, the tone, the words chosen from the substance, the underlying point. Sometimes people who genuinely care about you struggle with communication. They might say something harsher than intended. If you can identify the constructive message beneath the rough exterior, you can still glean value. For instance, a friend might say, "Your website design is really messy." No one's going to take you seriously if you don't fix it. It might sound rude, but there could be a valid observation hidden in there. Perhaps your layout does need simplifying, or your color scheme is jarring. Another angle to keep in mind is that not all criticism is about you. Sometimes people project their personal insecurities, fears, or frustrations onto you. A colleague who is overwhelmed by their own responsibilities might criticize your approach to working on a shared project, not because your approach is actually flawed, but because they're anxious and need someone to target. Recognizing projection is a skill that often comes with experience. If you suspect this is the case, take the remark with a grain of salt and address the real issue if possible. It's also useful to look at patterns in the criticism you receive. If multiple sources independently point out the same shortcoming, like a tendency to miss deadlines or a habit of interrupting others, it might be time for self-reflection. On the flip side, a unique or isolated criticism may simply reflect an individual's personal bias or preference. As with most lessons on staying unbothered, balance is key. Remain open enough to learn, but not so open that every random critique penetrates your sense of self. Finally, consider how you deliver criticism yourself. If you want to receive constructive feedback graciously, it helps to practice giving it in a respectful, solution-focused manner. This fosters an environment of mutual growth rather than one of defensiveness. Over time, people may reciprocate your thoughtful approach, offering their critiques in a kinder, more solution-driven manner. Of course, you can't control how everyone will speak to you, but modeling healthy feedback sets a precedent in your sphere of influence. This cyclical improvement benefits everyone involved and reduces the likelihood of anger causing confrontational exchanges. Anger, grudges, regret, these emotions can simmer beneath the surface of our daily existence, affecting our mental and physical health more than we might realize. Lesson 10. Master. The art of letting go addresses a critical step in maintaining emotional well-being. Letting go isn't about forgetting or endorsing what happened. It's about liberating yourself from the burdens of unresolved negative feelings. Often people cling to anger in the hope it will somehow bring justice or retribution against the person who hurt them. Yet, as many wise teachings emphasize, harboring anger is like holding a hot coal. You're the one who gets burned. Think of letting go as an active process rather than a passive act of simply ignoring your feelings. A good starting point is to acknowledge what happened and how it affected you. Maybe a friend betrayed your trust, a partner ended a relationship abruptly, or a boss passed you over for a promotion. These events can sting. Suppressing the hurt does not make it vanish. It usually festers in the subconscious. So step 1 is to recognize the pain. Step 2 is to decide, does holding on to this resentment improve my life, or does it keep me stuck? Almost invariably, the honest answer is that it keeps you stuck. Imagine carrying around a backpack full of heavy stones labeled betrayal, resentment, and anger. Each day you lug this weight from task to task, and every new frustration piles on another stone. Over time, your posture slumps, your energy wanes, and your spirit feels heavy. Letting go is akin to removing these stones one by one. You don't deny that they were once part of your journey, but you refuse to let them define your present and future. This conscious release can free up mental bandwidth for new experiences, healthier relationships, and personal growth. One practical method for facilitating this release is to write a letter, not necessarily one you'll send. Pour out the anger, the sadness, and the sense of injustice onto the page. Acknowledge how hurt you felt and why. Then conclude the letter with a statement of release such as, I choose to let go of this anger because it no longer serves me. Some people find it cathartic to tear up or burn this letter afterward, a symbolic gesture of discarding the emotional weight. While it might sound simplistic, such rituals can have a powerful impact on your psyche, reinforcing your decision to move on. Forgiveness often aligns with letting go, although they're not exactly the same. Forgiveness involves an internal shift in your attitude toward the person or situation, while letting go emphasizes freeing yourself from the emotional load. Sometimes you might forgive someone but still recognize that you cannot fully trust them again, or that you need distance for your well-being. This boundary can coexist with forgiveness, as forgiveness does not obligate you to resume the relationship as it was. By mastering the art of letting go, you effectively reclaim parts of yourself that have been hijacked by negativity. You lighten your emotional load, enabling greater spontaneity, compassion, and self-awareness. In turn, you become better equipped to face new challenges without the baggage of old resentment skewing your perspective. This final lesson is a crown jewel in the practice of remaining unbothered. It ensures you do not just manage current triggers effectively, but that you also free yourself from the accumulated bitterness of past experiences. Lessons 9 and 10 serve as a culmination of the entire framework we've been discussing. Criticism and unresolved resentment are two of the most prevalent triggers of anger and emotional disturbance in human relationships. By learning to harness criticism rather than fear it, you transform it into a catalyst for self-improvement. No longer does a harsh comment blindside you into defensiveness. Instead, you regard it as data to be evaluated. Through careful reflection, you pick what's helpful and discard the rest. Meanwhile, letting go ensures that once a painful event or negative relationship dynamic has run its course, you don't continue to be haunted by it indefinitely. You consciously choose to unburden yourself of the emotional weight attached to memories of betrayal, disappointment, or regret. In doing so, you open mental and emotional space for constructive endeavors. This synergy between learning from criticism, Lesson 9, and releasing lingering negativity. Lesson 10 forms a powerful feedback loop. You grow from past experiences without being shackled by them. These two lessons also integrate seamlessly with the earlier insights. For instance, setting boundaries. Lesson 5 might inform how you respond to criticism. You welcome constructive comments, but refuse to tolerate personal attacks. Similarly, practicing gratitude, Lesson 8, can help you step away from resentments more quickly, as you focus on what you've gained or learned rather than what you feel was taken from you. It's all interconnected, and the more adept you become at each individual lesson, the more fluidly the entire system operates. One point of caution is that both reframing criticism and letting go can be emotional processes that don't necessarily complete overnight. They might involve repeated attempts, setbacks, and renewed efforts. If you're dealing with deep-seated issues, traumatic experiences, betrayal from a loved one, or harsh self-judgment, consider seeking additional support from a therapist, counselor, or trusted confidant. The Stoic approach is robust, but it does not replace professional help when the wounds are profound and multifaceted. By weaving these lessons together, you cultivate a resilient mindset that isn't easily rattled by the inevitable ebbs and flows of relationships, work, and personal challenges. You foster an environment in which anger becomes less frequent and more manageable, and in which personal growth is a continuous, self-directed journey. Even if circumstances remain tumultuous, you stand as the calm center of the storm, anchored in an understanding that you, and not external chaos, ultimately govern your emotional domain. Now that we've unpacked all 10 lessons, let's briefly revisit them in context to see how they piece together. Your reactions are your choice. Understand that between any provocation and your emotional response lies a moment of decision. Harness this to remain calm and aligned with your values. Stop expecting people to behave like you. Acknowledge that others' actions stem from their own perspectives and experiences. Accepting this reduces frustration and fosters realistic interactions. Let go of the need to always be right. Prioritize peace and growth over winning every argument. Sometimes gracefully yielding or agreeing to disagree is the wiser path. Don't let others' words define your worth. Your intrinsic value remains intact regardless of others' opinions. Cultivate self-assurance grounded in your own sense of integrity and achievement. Protect your energy by setting boundaries. Say no when necessary to prevent burnout, resentment, and overcommitment. Clarify your limits and stand by them. Detach from the opinions of others. Filter out unwarranted negativity or praise that doesn't align with your genuine self-assessment. Focus on internal benchmarks and trusted advisors. Respond with silence, not anger. Strategic silence can de-escalate conflict and maintain your composure. Know when to speak and when to withhold words for the sake of peace. Practice gratitude to dissolve anger. Shifting your focus to what you appreciate weakens anger's grip. Make gratitude a regular habit to foster a more optimistic mindset. Reframe criticism as a tool for growth. Sift through criticism for opportunities to improve. Reject baseless negativity, but remain open to insights that can help you evolve. Master the art of letting go. Free yourself from grudges, regrets, and resentments. Acknowledge what happened, learn from it, and release the emotional burden. These 10 pillars of emotional well-being interlock to form a robust strategy for navigating life's inevitable challenges with poise and composure. They don't promise a trouble-free existence, but they greatly reduce the frequency and intensity of emotional disturbances. By internalizing them, you position yourself to handle adversity with resilience, ensuring that each hurdle you encounter refines rather than breaks you. With the principles laid out, the question becomes, how do I put this into daily practice? The practical integration often involves 2 steps. First, self-awareness. Noticing when you're triggered, when you're about to lash out, or when you're slipping into negative thought patterns. A simple technique is to keep a small mental or written log of emotional spikes throughout your day. Write down what triggered the spike and how you responded. Over time, patterns emerge. Perhaps you notice certain co-workers, certain types of comments, or specific times of day when you're more prone to irritation. Knowing this helps you preempt and manage those triggers. Second, deliberate application. Each time you catch yourself reacting impulsively, pick one of these lessons and apply it. Are you letting someone's rudeness define your mood? Remind yourself that your reaction is a choice lesson 1. Are you pushing yourself to prove you're right over a trivial matter? Reflect on whether you'd rather be right or be at peace lesson 3. Did a critical remark leave you fuming? Try reframing it into a growth opportunity lesson. This step-by-step approach might feel cumbersome at first, but with repetition it grows more natural. Also consider supportive habits like meditation, journaling, or regular physical exercise. These practices help stabilize your mental and emotional state, making it easier to adopt and maintain the lessons. Meditation teaches you to observe thoughts without being controlled by them. Journaling clarifies your internal narratives, revealing hidden assumptions about yourself and others. Physical exercise discharges stress and improves mood, laying a more solid foundation for emotional control. Gradually, you'll notice a positive feedback loop. The more you practice these lessons, the more your stress diminishes. As your stress diminishes, it becomes even simpler to remain calm in challenging situations. That calmness, in turn, improves your relationships and decision-making, which fosters an even greater sense of well-being. Before long, what began as a set of conscious exercises morphs into your default mode of being an authentic embodiment of emotional mastery. As we arrive at the conclusion of Part 3, it's essential to remember that emotional mastery is an ongoing journey, not a one-time achievement. Life will continue to present new problems, new types of conflicts, and new criticisms. The nature of existence is flux, circumstances shift. People come and go, and we evolve personally. Thus, the lessons you've learned here are versatile tools, ready to be adapted and recalibrated as you grow. If you stumble, that's all right. View it as part of the learning curve. Each lapse in composure offers a chance to revisit these principles and refine your approach. In many ways, these 10 lessons form a roadmap for personal freedom. By removing the shackles of anger, external validation, and residual grudges, you give yourself permission to live on your terms. You become less reactive, more intentional, and paradoxically, more open to the richness of human experience. When you no longer see negativity or criticism as personal affronts, you can engage more deeply and compassionately with others. You might even find that people gravitate toward your calm presence or seek your perspective in tense situations. In essence, you become a beacon of stability in a sometimes chaotic world. If you found these insights helpful, consider sharing them with others who may benefit from this approach, or keep them to yourself as a personal compass, referring back whenever life tosses obstacles in your path. Remember, small changes in perspective can produce significant shifts in behavior and emotional well-being. You do not have to be at the mercy of every social or personal storm. You can cultivate the skill of steering your own emotional ship. This concludes our comprehensive journey through all 10 lessons, expanded, rearranged, and integrated with practical examples to help you genuinely internalize the insights. Feel free to comment on any part of this 3-part series. Reflect on how these strategies can manifest in your own life and share any personal experiences that resonate with these teachings. Stay committed to this practice, and gradually you will discover a serene inner core that remains unbothered by the turbulence around you. As we close this powerful journey, imagine yourself standing victorious at the end of your own epic tale, no longer controlled by anger, frustration, or other people's negativity. You've learned the art of emotional mastery, taking back your story from critics and haters, and stepping forward with courage, clarity, and confidence. Just like any great hero, your transformation doesn't end here. It's an ongoing adventure filled with endless possibilities for growth. Remember, true strength comes not from dominating others, but from gracefully mastering your reactions. Now it's your turn to speak. Share your own stories, strategies, or struggles in the comments below. What scenes from your life have these insights helped rewrite? Join our community of mindful warriors, and don't forget to subscribe. Together, let's continue crafting a life of unshakable peace, resilience, and emotional freedom.